So, next we have on board a master quilter, a master fundraiser, and I don't know what this lady couldn't do if she tried. She's just a wonderful friend and community neighbor to have. Judy Ross.
I've been quilting for 75 years, and that's what qualifies me as a master quilter, I think. If you've done it that long, either you need to be talked to, or you've gotten reasonably good at it. My grandmother taught me, at the beginning, she taught me to embroider. The first quilt I made was little embroidered squares that you bought at the 5 and dime, and then you sewed them together, and it turned into a baby quilt eventually. Then later I learned to use a machine and all of that, and for many years, well, for 50 years, certainly I made quilts all the time. I had to go to school, eventually I had children, things interrupted me, but I always made at least one a year. And then after I moved from Los Angeles up here, which is about 25 years ago, I was pretty much free to do whatever I wanted. And so then I've made many, many more. Probably in my life I've made over 1,000 quilts, quilted pieces of one size or another. And if you do the small ones, probably 2,000. But those first years I was learning to sew. I wasn't designing. Most quilters don't do that. I mean, they just get to that part where they don't design quilts themselves. They get a pattern. American traditional quilting is traditional quilting. There are patterns, they have names, they have stories, and you see them and you say, oh, I want one like that. I want to make that kind. But eventually, I guess, maybe it doesn't happen to everybody, you think, I'd like to make my own, the one that I want to make. And when I had the time to actually spend doing it, you can't really do it very well if you have dinner and then you clear off the table and you bring out a few sewing things and then you take it off because now it's breakfast time. So when I moved up here, Ed built me a studio to work in, and that was the first time I'd ever had anything other than like a kitchen table to work on. And so you could really focus on stuff in a really nice way. And I grew up in Idaho, which is in a high desert area. And then I lived in Los Angeles for many years and some other places, but mostly it's been kind of dry places. So we moved up here because we needed some rain. And I've got enough now. But so lots of what I did was just look around me and see. And that was what I did when I started designing stuff myself. And many of you have seen the abandoned house quilts over there. And that was not the first series of quilts I did, but one of the early ones. And I found that that's what I liked doing, was working in a series. And everybody doesn't like that, but that's what I do. And I had a show for those abandoned houses up in Canada, and it had all those quilts, and then it had a couple of other just kind of scenic landscapey pieces. And they asked me for a title for it, and I said, well, it's abandoned houses, and then I remembered there were those landscapes. And I said, okay, abandoned houses and other quilts without people. And after I told them that, I thought, why are there no quilts with people? And so that was the next series, because I did was a lot of quilts with people. Some of those quilts have 30, 40 people in a given piece. Those are not bed quilts, but wall quilts. So it's that kind of thing that you get an idea from someplace, and then you move through a whole lot of variations of that. And then there comes a point, as with the abandoned houses, I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't think of anything I'm doing with this now that I can make it enough different to interest me. Because it's all about interesting me. I love it when people like them, but it's basically about interesting me. So this spring, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about, basically what I'm going to talk about is this one series that I just started on. In the spring I was reading a lot of Buddhist stuff because of my husband's death. And I had been a pretty serious Buddhist student years before. And I was reading a book, and they referred to an Okesa, a pieced Buddhist robe. And I'd never heard, Japanese quilting, there's a very fine tradition, but I'd never heard of it in Buddhism, and particularly this kind. And I found a book on the net, God bless the net, a PDF file of 82 pages that told me how to make an Okesa. And it's got a great many rules to it, which is sort of yes and no for the Buddhists, I guess, but for the Japanese ones, it made more sense. So an Okesa, well, here is the first one I made, and I'll just show you how you wear it. Looks like this. And you wear it like this. And there's a thing where you put a button and a loop on it. That's what it looks like. And the rules for the Okesa are you measure the distance from your elbow to the end of your finger. And in my case, it's 19 inches. And so your Okesa will be 5 times that long and 3 times that wide. So you've got that. And then it will have 5, 7, or 9 strips. This one has 5, I think. And so you have to figure out how to... Algebra has never been as useful to me as it is in quilting. I have a granddaughter who's trying to learn algebra, and I'm saying, quilting, it's for quilting. There will be a use for this in your life, remember it. So then the next set of rules is, and so you gather together some rags, and because this is not to be a showy piece. And for modern day people, you can go to the thrift store or something like that. But it's all to be done of stuff that is finished its other use. It's all to be recycled, repurposed. So I had a tablecloth that I bought at the thrift store in Tawasin 15 years ago or so, and it had kind of worn out. And so I dragged that out, figured it would have enough material to be the basic thing. So I had my first rag, and then I took a lot of Ed's old shirts and picked out some materials that kind of went with it that would be for the other pieces. And the strips are to be 2 rectangles and 1 square that is half the rectangle. And so you've got that. And the rectangles are the main fabric, and the squares are the other fabric. And then there's sashing in between them. So you can see how this works. Can you hold that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the tablecloth was this kind of material. It was kind of a batiqued light blue and cream piece. And then this is a shirt. This is a sashing piece. And the squares are all shirts. And the sashing are all shirts. So got that sort of, got the material so you can say, okay, the next thing for the rules is you have to dye it all brown and blue. Not brown or blue, but brown and blue. Because it's supposed to look kind of like the dirt. Or something like that. It's not supposed to be contrasting, and that's a real tough thing for a quilter because most traditional quilting is based on big contrasting. So you have to find find happiness in working with something. I'd never worked with anything like this before, trying to do this thing. And when I had it all sewn together, then I was pretty pleased with how it looked, but I wanted it to have a lot of texture because that's probably my biggest interest in them, is getting things to be very textured. And what was so much fun about the abandoned houses was getting grass and bushes and stuff like that. So I decided I would go back to my grandmother's teaching me to embroider, to hand embroidery, to give it some texture. And I dyed all the embroidery thread so it would kind of not be too contrasting. I wanted you to be able to see it a little, but not a lot. And this down here, you can see it up close. There are tiny stitches every quarter inch.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Which from a distance just looks like pattern.
Yeah.
But when you're up close to it, you get lots of texture to it. So,
Is the texture part of the rules?
no, I was violating the rules. They don't mention the texture. Since I'm not a Buddhist in
The texture is part of
organization,
Judy.
I can mess with it a little bit. And since I was pretty sure I was going to do a series, and I could mess with it more than that. But this one I didn't go too far out because I thought that it doesn't look showy, but it feels showy.
Wow.
So, and then I dyed this to go in the back, and it was an old sheet that had been outside over a bench saw, a table saw, and it was kind of messy, and you can see it's still kind of messy. So I thought
It's got a new life now.
it's got a new life, and so I was pretty happy with that. And I was visiting a friend and showing it to her, and I said, I don't know, I have to find another tablecloth, I guess. And she jumped up and she ran over and gave me a tablecloth that was in use by her cat. And so I said, yes, yes, yes. And I took it home, and so this one is still in process.
And the safety pins?
The safety pins are to hold it all together. It's got a backing on it right now.
It's still,
For the embroidery, you have to have 2 layers,
it's unfinished.
and so they come off when I finish the embroidery. And then it will eventually be quilted. This one is also quilted.
That's true.
And this one will
You'll
be
do
quilted too.
stitching,
And,
you'll add stitching to it as you did the other one.
oh,
We've
well,
already got some.
it's already done on that side, in parts of it. The brown here,
Okay, yeah.
and here, and there are white running stitches here. And all of these will need more. This side isn't done yet, this side.
Those are hand stitches?
That's all hand stitching, yeah. Yeah, it's what in the quilting world we refer to as a low quilt, which is a lot of work. People often come up at quilting shows and say, oh wow, that's a lot of work. And it's try not to do that if you're a quilting show. It just crushes you. If you're the quilter, it's like, well, yeah, but quilters have patience.
And you're going to add the blue? You're going to add blue?
No, not on this one. I did dye this all the way through a brown dye bath, but I didn't put any blue in it. And the red is way too bright for the Okesa rules, but that's okay.
No, she
It's
left the
my
rules on
quilt,
her desk.
not theirs. And the Buddhists would be the first to say, do it your way, Judy, if you think it's best. And be kind, if possible. It's always possible to be kind. Thank you very much.
Judy, culturally, where did the rules come from? Where is the custom? What part of the world?
Oh, well, Japan.
Japan.
For this, but American quilting has just as many rules, 50,000 times as many rules.
Okay, but for this,
this one
is Japanese.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Well, it's a Japanese Buddhist.
Okay.
How long does it take you to complete a quilt?
Well, it depends on how much handwork. I do hand quilt all of my quilts, unless they're very small, heavy pieces where you can't actually get through the many layers. And a double bed quilt, say, usually I'm working with 2 at a time. One that I'm sewing, and one that I'm piecing, and one that I'm sewing, doing the handwork on. And that way, I will have a quilt finished every month.
Wow.
But if you were doing bigger pieces, then it's going to be like a queen size quilt. That takes longer, and the more square inches, the more it is. When you sell them by the square inch.
Whoa.
Okay.
Thank you.